Hi, I'm Joe Crook. I'm doing this film for my niece with the history of my family's background related to cultural diversity. When John Kennedy was running for president, my family was all Catholics, and my uncle had a business venture and he had a partner. My father went and was talking with my uncle, and business venture's uncle's partner came in groaning and complaining that they were going to have a Catholic in the White House. And this was real traumatic to my father. And his family had been Catholics for generations and generations. And he was outraged by this. And he eventually got involved with some of the different cultural diversity things through the starting of that. And he got a job as an equal employment opportunity officer somewhere after this. And he got involved in Indian affairs and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And this would have been in about 1965. He started getting involved in this various different things. In about 1968 or so, the local branch of the National Advancement for Colored People, the NAACP, was running a drive for membership. And the reward for the person who obtained the most members was an expense-paid trip to New York City for the annual convention. And there were 6 children in my family, and all 6 of us ended up joining the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People that year. And we lived in an upper middle class neighborhood, and there were 3 black families around the corner. And my father managed to go around and get a large majority of those people to join. And he was real motivated to win the trip. And he won the trip for the most members that were new to join the NAACP that year. He and his various different things became friends with a gentleman by the name of George Youngbear. George was the chief of the Sac and Fox Indian tribe, and that's in Tama, Iowa. And George was to our house many times, and I remember George being with my father and going to an Indian tribal meeting in South Dakota to one of the tribes there. And I remember then George being there overnight and getting ready to leave, and then I remember when he came back into town. We frequently went to tribal activities in Tama, Iowa, which is about 60 miles east of Des Moines, where I live. And we went to the different powwows and the things along those lines. We were Catholics, and every Sunday was a family thing of go to church and go out to breakfast. And my father, and this would have been about 1969 or so, decided that we should see some of the different churches in our family. And so we all loaded up and went to church at the Corinthian Baptist Church the first Sunday, and this was predominantly a black church, and black Baptist church, and we were the only white people in the church at that particular time. And it was amazing to me, having been a Catholic and having the calm ceremonies that Catholics would have, to see this dynamic religious celebration on a Sunday morning. I really did not know what to think of this. And the next Sunday we went to Kingsway Cathedral, and I don't remember which denomination they were with, but they also had a very dynamic service. And well, the third Sunday is some of Dad's friends that were black came to the Catholic Church, and parked in the parking lot down the street and walked into church. And the church was pretty, the parishioners were pretty well put out by this. They'd not experienced black people being in the Catholic Church at all before. And when we were leaving, one of the parishioners had a poor comment about trying to integrate the church. And he said it right to the black people. And my father was also pretty outraged by this. And that precipitated him changing from the church that we'd gone to as children to the Catholic Church of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this was a Catholic church, and it was in the Hispanic community. And my father became the treasurer, and my mother was the organist, and the church was predominantly Hispanic people. And the minister, or the priest, came out of the main church in Des Moines, downtown. My father and mother got very involved in this Hispanic Catholic church, and were quite active members of this. And they enjoyed that. At this point in time, the children, we'd go to that church some, but it was predominantly my father and mother were involved with that, and did stay involved with that for years. My father, as I had said, was heavily involved in the NAACP. He was the president of the local branch here in Des Moines for 1 year. And I remember one Friday night, we had, at this particular point in time, they didn't refer to cultural diversity, they called this race relations. And my father had a film from work entitled, sure enough, Race Relations. And it was Friday night at about 7 o'clock, and we congregated, all of us around the house, and all of my father's friends. And pretty soon the telephone rang, and it was the governor's secretary of Iowa. And my father and most of his friends were Democrats, and Iowa was predominantly a Republican state. And I think the Republican governor had figured that he was not going to get any votes when he came to this particular function. And so at the last minute he called and canceled out. But we were all amazed that my father had invited the governor to this, and the governor did call. And we watched the film entitled Race Relations. And it talked about, at this particular point in time, blacks were commonly called Negroes. And the highlight of this is that blacks now prefer to be called blacks at this particular point in time. And that was addressed in the film. As I remember my father's involvement with the NAACP, is there were a lot of children in his family running around the house, and our friends were in and out all the time. And he was heavily involved in the youth movement of the NAACP. His goal seemed to get younger people involved in this, so as they grew older they could be more involved and more in the process of changing things. And this was a continuous job to keep young people involved, and the NAACP did a pretty good job of that, and worked aggressively at that.